life stories. Don't forget to subscribe to start today's story. She was just the maid, invisible, unnoticed, the kind of woman who moved through rooms without leaving a trace. But the day the judge read the will, everything changed. When Elena Brooks stood up, the room froze. The Harrington children, dressed in designer suits and entitlement, couldn't believe what they heard. Their father had left the entire estate to her. But what no one knew, not even Alina, was that hidden deep beneath the mansion's floorboards was a secret that would rewrite everything they thought they knew about their family and about her. What did Mr. Harrington hide in the room no one was ever allowed to enter? And why did his late wife warn Elena to never trust the man everyone respected? Stay with me, because this isn't just a story about inheritance. It's a story about power, memory, betrayal, and what happens when the invisible finally become unforgettable. I still remember the first time I walked through the iron gates of the Harrington estate. It was a gray November morning, the kind where the sky hangs low like it's unsure whether to rain or weep. I was 22, broke, grieving, and utterly alone in the world. My mama had just passed, and with no siblings or cousins to speak of, I had nowhere to go and nothing to hold on to. The job offer came through a friend of a friend. I didn't ask many questions. I packed a small suitcase, put on my mother's old church coat, and boarded a bus to Charleston, South Carolina. What waited for me there wasn't just a job. It was a world so far from mine, it might as well have been fiction. The Harringtons were legends around town. Old money, old charm, old rules. The estate itself was like something out of a forgotten novel. Towering white columns, windows like watchful eyes, and silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that presses against your skin. I was there to be the maid. Nothing more. William Harrington, the patriarch, had recently lost his wife Margaret. They said she died in her sleep, a gentle departure. But the grief in that house wasn't gentle at all. It hung in the air like dust in the light, coating every surface. Her scent, lavender and old books, still clung to the drapes. Her laughter, they said, used to echo through the halls. Now, the house just held its breath. At first, I kept my head down. Clean, fold, wash, repeat. I tended to the children, Rachel, David, Lily, and little Matthew, when the nanny wasn't around. I learned how to move without sound, how to make myself invisible. That's what you do when you work in houses like that. You become furniture with a heartbeat. But Mr. Harrington, he noticed things. He never raised his voice. He didn't need to. His presence filled every corner of a room long before he stepped into it. But there were nights, late, quiet nights, when the house was asleep and I'd be wiping down the counters and he'd just talk. Not to me, not really. Just into the air, as if the silence had become unbearable and needed breaking. He spoke about Margaret, how she loved jazz records and gardening in bare feet, how they used to dance slow in the living room once the kids were asleep, how he missed the sound of her stirring sugar into her tea. I never interrupted. I just let the words hang between us, like threads of something fragile and real. Maybe he needed someone who wouldn't ask for anything. Maybe I just needed someone to see me. Days bled into months, then years. I stayed, through holidays, heartbreaks, birthdays, broken arms, and broken hearts. I stayed when the children outgrew the house, when the laughter vanished room by room. I stayed when William Harrington got older, slower, quieter. I stayed when the cancer came. I stayed when even he started to fade. One afternoon, he called me into the sunroom. The light poured through the tall windows like gold, and he looked smaller than I remembered, tucked into a chair with a wool blanket over his knees. His hand trembled when he reached for mine. "Elena," he said, voice brittle. "I don't have much time left." I didn't say anything. I just held his hand, the way I had held his children's when they scraped their knees, the way no one had held mine when my mother died. "You've been more family to me," he whispered, "than anyone with my last name." That night, I cried into a pile of clean laundry. I didn't cry when my mama died. Not like that. But this broke something open. When he passed, the house seemed to exhale for the first time in years. The air shifted. Something was over. And I thought, so was my place there. So when the envelope came inviting me to the reading of his will, I thought it was a mistake. Still, I went. Dressed in the same black dress I wore to his funeral, sat in the back row like I always did. Watched his children file in, Rachel in Chanel, David with his perfect posture, Lily clutching a designer handbag, Matthew scrolling on his phone like none of this mattered. I was a shadow again. Just the help. But then the judge cleared his throat. "To Miss Elena Brooks," he began, and I swear the air in that room stopped moving, for her unwavering loyalty, quiet strength, and the love she gave me when I had nothing left. Every eye in the room turned to me. I leave the Harrington estate, in full. Silence, thick, cracking. Rachel stood so fast her chair screeched against the floor. "This is a mistake," she snapped. She was just the maid. But the judge didn't blink. Mr. Harrington was quite clear in his intentions. In Miss Brooks, he found a home. My heart pounded like a warning bell. Was this real? The Harrington children didn't say goodbye. They stormed out like strangers. All those years I patched their coats and sang them to sleep, and now I was just air. And yet, when I walked out of that courthouse, holding nothing but a letter and my breath, I knew something had changed. Everything had changed. But this was only the beginning. What would you have done if you were Elena in that courtroom? Have you ever felt invisible until someone truly saw you? Stay with me, because what happened next behind the doors of the Harrington estate, what was discovered, what was revealed, changed everything all over again. Don't miss part 2. The driveway felt longer that night. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as the Harrington estate came into view, its silhouette lit faintly by the moonlight, proud and still like it always had been. But this time, it didn't feel like I was approaching someone else's world. This time, I had the key. I didn't park by the servants' entrance like I had for over 30 years. I drove up to the front, where the family's luxury cars used to line up for galas, charity dinners, and Christmas Eve. I stepped out in silence. No housekeeper to greet me. No staff. Just me, Elena Brooks, a maid with a key to a kingdom. The brass key slid into the lock smooth as butter, like it had been waiting for me all along. But when the door creaked open, the air that met me wasn't welcoming. It was cold, watchful. Like the house itself wasn't quite sure what to do with me now. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The click of the latch echoed louder than it ever had before. Everything looked the same. The antique vases, the chandelier with one flickering bulb, the marble floor I used to mop every Saturday morning while the children watched cartoons upstairs, and the portraits. The stoic faces of generations of Harringtons stared down at me from the walls like silent judges. I almost turned around. Almost. But then I walked toward the kitchen. It was always my sanctuary. The warmest place in the house. I half expected to find Mr. Harrington sitting there, waiting for tea, humming Sinatra like he used to. But there was only stillness now. The stool where he always sat was pushed back, just slightly, like someone had just stood up. I touched the worn wood, felt the groove where his ring had once scratched the surface. Then I sat, and I let myself feel it. All of it. The weight of being noticed after a lifetime of invisibility. The grief of losing the only man who ever saw me, not as the help, not as a worker, but as Elena. The disbelief that I was now the sole owner of a place that once made me feel small. But the quiet didn't last. Somewhere upstairs, I heard a soft thud, like a door closing. My heart jumped into my throat. I stood, listening. The house was supposed to be empty. The children had cleared out. No one else had a key. I walked slowly to the bottom of the grand staircase, the one I used to polish every Tuesday. The silence returned, but it had changed. It wasn't just still, it was waiting. I climbed one step, then another. I don't know why I didn't just leave. Maybe part of me was afraid the house would take it all back if I turned away now. The second floor hallway stretched out like a tunnel of ghosts. Margaret's perfume still lingered faintly in the wallpaper. I passed the children's old rooms. Rachel's with the pink canopy bed, Matthew's always a mess of Legos and comic books. All closed, except one. The door to Mr. Harrington's study. It was open, barely. I hadn't stepped foot in that room in over a decade. It was off limits, sacred. He used to lock it when he was alive. No one but him ever entered. The door creaked as I pushed it gently. Inside, it smelled of old paper and pipe tobacco. Books lined the walls. Papers covered the massive mahogany desk. But something new caught my eye. A small black envelope sitting in the center of the desk with my name written in bold, looping script. Elena. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single line, handwritten. If you're reading this, then they don't know everything. I froze. Who? Know what? My eyes scanned the room. There, beside the bookshelf, a small wooden panel slightly ajar. A draft whispered through the crack. I reached forward, heart pounding, pulled. It opened to reveal a narrow stairwell descending into darkness. The Harrington estate had a hidden basement, and I had just been invited to discover what it was meant to keep buried. If you found a secret door in a house you just inherited, would you go down alone? Or would you walk away, not knowing what truth might be waiting in the dark? Because what lies beneath this house, the things Mr. Harrington never spoke about, the truths the children pretended not to see, are about to turn this inheritance into something far more dangerous than I ever imagined. Join me in part 3, The Secret Below the Floorboards. The stairwell smelled of dust and time. As I descended into the darkness, the narrow wooden steps creaked under my feet, each one a whisper of secrets long kept. My phone flashlight cut through the thick air, revealing brick walls, cobwebs, and the remnants of a forgotten space beneath the grand Harrington estate. At the bottom, I found a room. Small, square, silent. In the center stood an old metal filing cabinet, rusted but intact, with a single word scratched into the top drawer: confession. My breath hitched. For a moment, I considered walking away. But then I thought of the envelope upstairs, the way Mr. Harrington's handwriting trembled when he said, "They don't know everything." I opened the drawer. Inside were folders, dozens of them, labeled with dates, names, and handwritten notes. And at the top, one that bore the name I hadn't heard in decades: Margaret Harrington. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter, dated 6 months before her death. To whom it may concern, if anything happens to me, know this: I did not go peacefully. My husband is not the man the world believes him to be. For years, I kept his secrets, the affairs, the manipulation, the quiet threats. But now he wants to rewrite the will, to punish the children, to give everything to her, the maid. Her name is Elena Brooks. She is not to blame. She's young, kind, and oblivious to the way he watches her. He is trying to make her the symbol of his redemption, but he is not redeemed. If I die suddenly, look here. Look deeper. I stood frozen. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were leaning in. Could this be real? Mr. Harrington, the man who told me I was family, the man who said I mattered, the only person who ever looked me in the eyes and truly saw me. Was it all a lie? My knees buckled. I sat on the cold floor, letters shaking in my hands. What if I wasn't the miracle he chose, but the pawn he used? Suddenly, a voice echoed down the stairwell. "Elena?" I jumped. It was Lily. Her voice, older, worn. I climbed the stairs fast. When I reached the study, she stood in the doorway, her face pale. Behind her, Rachel and David hovered near the hall. "I saw the lights on," Lily said softly. "We didn't think you'd actually move in." "You knew?" I said, holding up the letter. "About the basement, about this." They looked at one another, avoided my eyes. Rachel finally spoke. "We found it after Mom died, but Dad threatened to cut us off if we said anything. So we kept quiet." David nodded slowly. "He said she was unstable, that it was grief talking. We wanted to believe him." "And you thought I wanted this house," I said bitterly. "That I was just the maid who got lucky." "You were the one who stayed," Lily said. "The one who was there when we couldn't be." Her voice cracked. "We didn't deserve it. But maybe he was trying to make something right in the only way he knew how." I looked back at the letter, at the pain in Margaret's handwriting, at the fear. And I realized something. This house wasn't mine because of love. It wasn't even mine because I earned it. It was mine because I was the last one standing. The quiet one, the loyal one, the invisible one. I looked up at them. These grown children who never said thank you, never noticed me, now looking at me like I held their history in my hands. Then help me make it right, I said. Help me open the rest of those files. All of them. Let's find out the truth. About him, about her, about this house. They nodded, and for the first time in decades, we sat together at the same table, not as employer and servant, but as survivors. Weeks passed. Weeks passed. We uncovered years of letters, ledgers, secrets, some painful, some liberating. We donated what we could, destroyed what we must. And when the house was finally clean, truly clean, I walked through it not as a maid, but as its keeper. I planted lavender by the porch steps, hung one of Margaret's favorite paintings above the fireplace, and every night I sat in the kitchen, tea in hand, and let the quiet wrap around me, not as silence, but as peace. I never asked for this story, but somehow it became mine. And now I'm telling it. Not for the past, but for someone out there who thinks they'll always be invisible. You're not. How did this story make you feel? If it touched something in you, even just a little, comment. I'd love to know where you're watching from, so drop your country in the comments. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be shared, about the unseen, the unheard, the ones who are finally seen, please share this with someone who needs it, because sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest stories. Thank you for listening.